I think it was a decision that was probably made on a balance of factors. You had the federal government, all of the state and territory governments involved. You had the chief medical officer, Professor Paul Kelly, providing advice, and I'm pretty sure he's very well qualified to do so. On balance, that's the decision that those governments have taken, and we welcome it. We think that it's a very important signal that we've turned the corner, that we are getting back to normal life, and we can get on with business.
I did speak to Dr. Roderick McRae in the last hour. He is the president of Victoria's AMA, and he said, yes, he welcomes these changes, but not now. Now is not the time as yet. We are not quite over that emergency response period. There is a concern that we may be jumping the gun here.
Look, I think one of the important things to recognise here is firstly, of course, we've got to continue to be vigilant, and if we do see signs that the situation, the public health situation, begins to deteriorate again, if a new variant emerges, then of course governments have to be prepared to go back and put appropriate measures in place, and that might be implementing the isolation periods again, or other measures. So if the circumstances warrant that, then of course that can be the case. But we also have to recognise that now we're at a point where, for the first time this year, we're at about the lowest level of infection. And I think circumstances do warrant a decision like this at this point in time.
Yeah, and you welcome the decision, of course, but you're also urging employers, as you said, to be vigilant and to get infected workers to self-isolate if there is an uptick in COVID infection numbers. Given, though, that the business sector has been affected by labour shortage for so long, how optimistic are you that employers would be so conscientious to actually tell their staff to take the day off or a couple of days off to recover from COVID?
Well, because it's in their interest. It doesn't help anybody in their business if you have somebody who has an infection coming into your workplace, infecting your customers or making your other employees sick. So, of course, it's the responsible thing to do. And we have to remind business and employers about that. And I'm sure they will do the right thing. This is a step that we have to take. And of course, business has to be responsible in that process.
On another matter, of course, the pandemic leave payments will also be scrapped by October 14. This will affect casual workers in particular. Won't this be a disincentive for these workers to self-isolate and then further affect the business sector? What about health and safety for other staff?
Well, look, it is an important issue, and obviously we've got to strike the right balance. We've had that support in place now for some time, and I think as long as you had those public health measures in place where you were requiring people to isolate, then I think that was appropriate. But of course, look, if you're a casual employee, you are getting that extra bit of pay that is intended to provide financial support if you have to take time off. But look, here I think employers have got to be flexible, they've got to be responsible, they've got to work with their employees to ensure that everybody is kept safe, and I think that's got to be the focus. So going forward, I think really we've got to try and be very practical about the way that this is implemented.
Just on that matter, in terms of looking after casual workers who do depend on the daily wage, unions are calling on governments to change workplace laws so that more workers would have access to sick leave. Would you support such changes?
Look, I think not at this point. I think we've really got to have a look at what makes casual employment attractive, and for many people it is a very attractive option. It's not that we've seen a huge surge in the size of the casual workforce over recent years. In fact, it's at about the same level, about 22 or 23% of the workforce. That's the same level that it was about 30 years ago. So, look, I think there's this notion that there are more insecure jobs these days. That's actually a fiction. It's not based on the realities that we see out there in the labour market. And for many people, they want to work with that flexibility. So I think we've got to accept that that is part of the modern economy and part of being a competitive and productive society.